Ready? Go to look in with me. We are on Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph. And we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines from the top. Okay? If a person ate 5 olive sizes of let's say chazir, or pig, or any other prohibited food, then he's vadel over rishon, and he found out about the first kizayis, the first time he ate it, and it should say instead of umevi, the Shari Teres Yisrael changes to v'hifrish korban. He set aside a korban for that, but he didn't sacrifice it yet. B'sheni, he ate a second kizayis. He found out about the second kazayas, v'hifrish again, it should say, and he set aside a second korban. B'shlishi, he found out about the third one again, it should say v'hifrish, he set aside a third korban. V'revi, he found v'hifrish korban. V'revi, they found out about the fourth one, then v'hifrish korban, he set aside a korban. V'chamishi, and then he found about the 5th one, and should again be v'hifrish korban, which should again say v'hifrish korban. He set aside a korban. So then Rabbi Yochanan, so he has 5 korbanos. He has 5 korbanos now. He ate 5 for kazaysim of prohibited substance, and he set aside 5 korbanos because he found out, but he went to separately. But he hasn't yet shechted any of the korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. So Rabbi Yochanan there
doesn't shecht them for a month.
No, so now we're going to learn actually what the halacha is in that case. Rabbi Yochanan is couple of a rishon. Rabbi Yochanan says he gets.
Shall I go through it?
Let's keep learning. Rabbi Yochanan is couple of a rishon. Rabbi Yochanan said he can use the first animal which he set aside for all 5 atonements which he needs. Why? Shehu, it should say la'achar achilas kulhem. It's after he ate all of them. In other words, even though he didn't find out about the other 4 until after he set aside the first animal, Rabbi Yochanan already said this earlier in the Masechta, that since he found out about it, since he set aside the korbanos, even though he didn't yet know about the other 4, but since he already had eaten the other 4, and he hadn't yet sacrificed any of them, so therefore they can all combine on the first one. And therefore the last 4 korbanos were unnecessary. You can just use them, sell them, and use the money, wait till they get a mum, sell them, and use the money to buy voluntary korbanos. Or maybe even bring themselves.
What's voluntary?
Korbanos which you don't...
What is voluntary?
They don't to atone for a specific aveira.
What is voluntary?
You give them out of the goodness of your heart. You're not requiring them. So, 1 second. Yeah, that's what Pnei Moshe says.
What's Pnei Moshe?
That's the Perishir on the side. Rabbi Shimon Lakish Omen Skapo Ba'achroina. Rabbi Shimon Lakish says he gets atoned for with the last one. In other words, Rabbi Shimon Lakish holds that it doesn't count until you know about it. Shimon Lakish Omen Skapo Ba'achroina doesn't count until you know about it, and therefore none of the first 4 can work, right? Because you still didn't find about the 5th one. But the 5th one can include all the first 4. So you use the last one. No, because he only ate 5 kazaysim. Achar was after.
How about the second?
No, because the first, second, and third can't atone for the ones of which he found out about later on, according to Shimon ben Lakish. So he only the 5th one. Shula Achar, it should be after. Again, the Shari so says Yedias Kulem, which he finds out of, which he set aside after having become aware of all the averos. and the other 4 korbanos, the first 4 korbanos he brought, they're pushed off, and I think that means they actually have to be starved to death, because it's a chatos, it's kapu bala b'acheres, a chatos, where the owners use another animal for the purpose of the chatos, that animal has to be put to death. Rav Chisda Rabbi Nuna, Rav Chisda had a similar machlokas to Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rav Chisda said like Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Chisda Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Nuna Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Rabbi Nuna said like Shimon Lakish. Rav Chisda Rabbi Nuna, so Rav Chisda asked Rav Nuna, "Well, Masdisa Messiah Loch." Now it's interesting thing. Rav Chisda said to Rabbi Nuna, "I have the Mishnah, which is a proof to you, who plead or lie and argues on me." So he's bringing a proof for the other guy, not for himself. He says, "I have a Mishnah which is a proof to you and argues on me." So what does the Mishnah say? It says it says if you found out about part of your prohibition before you part out in between. In other words, the awareness separates. Just like if you found and you became aware of a definite chiyuv between each korban you set aside, you have to bring a chatos on each and everything you became aware of. Even though when you did originally, you did as part of Elamachas, as part of one period of forgetfulness. But when you become aware later on, when you become reminded, so you have to bring in each one independently. But kach, and so too, maybe Asham Tol, you bring Asham Tol, which you bring if you commit an Aveh, which is a Safek. I'll call Achas V'Achas on each and every one, right? So in other words, so it sounds like you have to, that Yediyah, which becomes in the middle, breaks things up. Each Yediyah, each awareness you get, breaks up the Chiyuv Korban, and you can't combine them all together afterwards. So Ila Tana V'Osh. Why can't you? Because since you became aware of each one separately, so each one generates its own Korban. Each one requires to bring a separate korban. So that says Rav Chisda to Rabbi Nuna, you know what's a proof to you? Ilutana Osham V'Kamle Ya'us. If all he said was that
what happens if you tape it up?
You what?
Tape it up.
Tape it up? How can you tape it up? No, you can't. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Because here we're talking about things which happen in your mind, not things which happen in the physical world. So therefore, if you would say, I'm sorry, I went back a line. Ilutana Osham V'Kamle Yos would have just said by Osham. The separate yedios, the separate awarenesses make you have to bring separate korbanos. That'll be okay. But it draws a comparison between Osham and Chatos. It means that even just like by Osham told you Yediyah Safek, and a Yediyah which was where you're not 100% sure, makes you have to bring a korban. So too by Chatos, the Yediyah where you're not 100% sure, makes you have to bring a separate Chatos. So therefore, that sounds like it's like Reish Lakish, who says that any awareness of any sort makes a separation, and therefore you have to bring specifically the last korban, the last animal of the 5, which is after all the awarenesses, not the first one, which would then be set off from the other ones by the idea in the middle. Who says, I feel okay, let's start that even if you say that, you can always say that each one is differently. In other words, by chatos, by chatos, yes, it's true that if there's the idea in the middle, you have to actually bring a separate chatos by each one. But that, and by its osham, if you have a idea in a word, you have to bring a separate one. But by osham, it's idea sofek, which separates each one. However, by chatos, it's only ideas vada, it's only a definite awareness which separates each one. So if that's the case, then one could say that just like by chatos, it's only ideas vada which separates, not ideas safek. I guess what he's really saying is that just like by chatos, it's only ideas vada which separates, not ideas safek. So too, the idea doesn't separate and fix the korban in place, but rather somehow you can overcome that. I'm not sure exactly how, but somehow you can overcome the separate idea in the middle and say all the korbanos joined together. In other words, if the idea divides very easily, I guess is what we're saying. The idea divides very easily, like Reish Lakish learns. So then the first four korbanos can't work for the ideas which come, for awareness which come afterwards. But if the idea only divides when it's significant, so therefore you could say Rabbi Yochanan that the first korban works for the four which comes afterwards, not the last one on the previous.
What do you do?
It's something like that. I'm not sure if that's the
What do you eat 10 seasons? Half of it is 5. Right?
Yes, right. So then if you became aware of 5 and then another 5, so you bring 2 korbanos. 1 korban on the first 5, and the next korban on the next 5. Okay? Says more further. Now we're going to learn Asher, going off on a tangent really. Asher Nasi Yecheto. When a Nasi commits a sin, so the pasuk says Asher, language of Asher. Asher in Hebrew can mean also Rigashin to say that it means Ashrei, praiseworthy. Ashrei, Ashrei Shanosi Shlo Mevi Chat. It should be Ashrei Ador actually. Praiseworthy is generation where the Nasi, the generation, brings a Chatos. Why? Because of Nasi is usually, Nasi means the leader generation or the king. So if he's usually a very haughty person, but he's willing to bring a korban, he's not so haughty. So if he's not so haughty, maybe if he's willing to recognize his unintentional mistakes of bringing a korban, he's suddenly going to be willing to recognize and try to kapar on his intentional mistakes. And if Nasi Shlo maybe Chatos, if the leader of the generation, the king, brings a korban, certainly a comrade is going to bring a korban as well. Nasi, when it says Nasi, Yochel Nasi Kishvatim Kenachshon, when it's talking about the Nasi who brings the korban, is the Nasi of each and every Shevet, like Nachshon Aminov was the Nasi of the Shevet of Yehuda, right? Just like Nisan B'Ksur was the Nasi of the Shevet of Yisachar, right? So if you're going to say Yochel Nasi Shvat Kenachshon, Talmud Lomar, no. The pasuk says it's not enough. Why it can't? The special korban of Nasi brings it. Somebody who does one of the mitzvahs which Hashem gave, his God gave, his Lord gave him improperly. Lord Omer said later on says that a king should learn how to fear God, his Lord. The word Elokov appears in both of these. Just like the Elokim, which it says by a king, Nasi Shenagabov Elokov, it's a Nasi only has upon himself Hashem. In other words, there's nobody over the king except for Hashem. So too, Avkan, Av Elokov Shenamar Kanshut Elokov, it says here, is Nasi Shenagabov Elokov. It's a leader who has nobody over him except for his God, except for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Gemara makes a similar drasha. Asher Tzadikim Shemagia Lein K'Maaseh Arashim V'Yesh Hashim Shemagia Lein K'Maaseh Tzadikim. That's the opposite in Koheles. They're tzadikim who saw things before them as if they're Rishonim who have things before them as if they're tzadikim. Okay? The Holy One who's blessed, whose name is blessed. Anyway, let's go on because that doesn't say that here. HaTzadikim Shemagia Ashreya Matzadikim, praiseworthy of the tzadikim Shemagia and K'Maaseh Rishonim, who are punished in this world to atone for their sins, as if they were Rishonim. Va, that's the Asher, and Vai is goes on the V'yesh. And woe to Rishonim Shemagia and K'Maaseh Tzadikim. Tzadikim get in this world, Rishonim get reward in this world. As if they're tzaddikim, then woe to them, because that means they're going to get less olam haba. Okay? Melech Yisrael, Melech Yehuda. Now, what kind of kings bring the special korbanos which a king brings when he commits an avera? So both the king of the northern tribes of the northern 10 tribes, as king of Israel. Melech Yehuda, the king of Yehuda and Binyamin, those are the lower 2 tribes.
Israel.
Those are the 10 higher upper tribes. When the king is split in the time.
Yeah, but let's say you eat 27 and a half zisa.
We can't go back to that case now, because we have to go ahead. Okay? Ask me about that later, after shiur. No. Ask me about that after I finish with the shiur. Melech Yisrael, Melech Yehuda, name Shavi. The king of Yisrael, king of Yehuda were both equivalent in that each one would bring the special korban which was required of the king. Lo Zekor, we said Lo Zekor, we said neither was considered greater than the other. In other words, over the other one. Umataymo, what pasuk teaches this? A pasuk which talks about when the king of Israel and king of Judah got together. I think it's Achav and Yehoshaphat, that they were sitting, Melech Yisrael, Melech Judah, Begoren. They're sitting in a Goren, in a silo, and not like. So far we did half. Kivagoren. They were sitting like in a circle, and the Sanhedrin used to sit in a circle, and the Sanhedrin, all the members were equal, so to these 2 kings were equal, so each one brings a special korban. Rabbi Yezber Bul, and Rabbi Yezber said, L'chud ad Yehu ben Nimshi. It was only true until Yehu ben Nimshi that they were kings who were recognized by HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being legitimate kings, even though they were shoyim, but they were recognized by Hashem. Umatam, a pasuk teacher says, it says, B'nei Re'im Yeshvu L'chal Kisei Yisrael. It says, the 4 generations will sit for you on the throne of Israel. So until that 4th generation, they were all considered to be sanctioned by Hashem, even though they were shoyim, but they were appointed by Hashem. From there on in, B'listayu no lias, so wherever he became king of the northern kingdom, stole it. Okay? But shouldn't be appointed, why not? Yeah, but even Rishonim, if they were bringing a korban and do tshuva, so then they would bring the korban of a king. In other words, they didn't do tshuva, they didn't bring korbanos, but they did tshuva and brought korbanos, they bring the special korban which was brought by a king. We said...
Did they bring a kosher animal?
Yeah, sure, korban is always kosher animal. I think even when they worshipped Avodah Zarah, they brought kosher korbanos. I think that's the case. We talked about kings according to Dolim, how they're appointed with Shem and Amishra, with the oil of anointment, which was made by Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, it's not directly related, but we'll go back to the issue at hand. Rav Chuna said the Osan Shisha Chadashim, the dollar is really kind of superfluous. The good and Ephraim takes out. All the 6 months of David, but in the Avshalom, David ran away from his son Avshalom, who rebelled against him and claimed that he was king. So all those 6 months that David was running for Avshalom, he couldn't bring the special korban of a king. He would bring.
Avshalom was a Russian.
Avshalom was a Russian, right?
He bragged.
Yes, he bragged about his hair. He brought the korban which a commoner would bring, which is a female goat instead of a male goat. Tani Rabbi Loy says Shem Namishcha Sha'asa Moshe, the special oil of anointment which is. So what?
Was also the one that got mark?
I don't think so.
Why?
Only Cain got marked. Okay. Tari Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shem Namishcha Sha'asa Moshe the Shem Namishcha made by Moshe Rabbeinu Bahar and Har Sinai Ma'aseh Nisim Nasu Bo. It was miraculous. So from the beginning to the end, it was miraculous.
You got ink on his thing?
No, he didn't get ink here. There's a different Agada. It's about the ink with which Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Sefer Torah. Aaron had actually the oil of anointment with which Aaron was anointed, stayed in his beard. miraculously that might be referring to. Anyway, then we're not talking about actually that miracle is not mentioned here. So Time Rabbi Loya Meshan Mishla source for Moshe, the Shemin HaMishla that Moshe Rabbeinu made, Bahar and Har Sinai, Ma'aseh Nisim Nasu Bo Mitchil Vatzov, miracles occurred with it from beginning to end. Shemitchil Lo Yubo El Yud Beis Luke, initially it only had 12 Luke. Shemar, it says, V'Shemin Zayis Hin. The oil of the made from the olives was a hin, and the hin is, I guess, 12 luk. And now that oil had to absorb all sorts of fragrances from all sorts of incense, all sorts of wood incense. And says Zumar, there wouldn't be enough of it to smear on all the wood which they needed for the incense. Allah has how much more so is that a problem that when they cook up the wood in a fire with that oil, there's oil which gets absorbed by the fire, which it evaporates, Vayura bolas, and the pot takes in some of the oil, Beitin bolon, and some of the wood takes in as well. Nevertheless, they had enough oil to create the Shemin HaMishcha. From that oil they anointed the Mishkan, Chol Kelev, and all of the utensils in the Mishkan. HaMizbeach, the altar, Chol Kelev, and all the utensils of the altar. HaMenorah, the menorah, Chol Kelev, and all the utensils of the menorah. Kiyar, the sink which they use in order to wash the hands and feet of the Kohanim, Kano, and its base, they're all anointed.
Who made the faucet?
Betalo. From that oil were
how did he know how to make it?
Hashem just explained it. From it were anointed the high priest and the kings. Melech, now by kings, the first king in a line requires his anointment, but his children, Melech ben Melech, the king who's the son of a king, doesn't require his own separate anointment. Shneimar, it says, when Shmuel anointed David, Hashem said to him, go and anoint, get up and anoint David, because he's the one. I'll tell you when I get there. Because he's the one. David required anointment. His children not require anointment. I have a Kohen Gadol ben Kohen Gadol, but Kohen Gadol, son of Kohen Gadol, even unto 10 generations, Torah Mashiach, he has to be anointed. All of this oil exists. Even though they anointed so many people with this oil, whatever oil there was still exists. They never got smaller than the amount of 12 luk. Shneimar says, Shemin Mishkas Kodesh, this Shemin Mishkas Kodesh will all be for all time, so it's regenerated itself miraculously. And one only anoints kings by a spring. Shneimar says, Shlomo Beni, David said, take Shlomo my son, and anoint him, anoint him next to a spring. Okay? So it was done by Tzadok, the priest, and Nasan the king, Nasan the prophet, to make Shlomo the king over Israel. Usually we don't anoint kings if they're from the children or descendants of a king, unless there was a machlokas. So we name Anim Shach Shlomo. Why was Shlomo anointed? The name Achlokas Adonio, because Adonio wanted to be the king and almost took over himself. So they anointed Shlomo to demonstrate that Shlomo was the proper heir. The Yoash, why was Yoash anointed? The Atalia, because Atalia, his one of his father's wives, I don't remember if it's his own mother or not, but Atalia killed all the children of her husband so they wouldn't become kings. So in order to demonstrate that she was unsuccessful and that Yoash was king, they anointed Yoash. The Yehu or Bimnei Yoram. It's also another case of Machlokas. So says the Gemara, Lo king. Well, I tried calling you. Yeah. I tried calling you because to start after Marav. Yeah. Yes. So I did a blot now with my son. I tried calling you a couple of times. We're at Tesfon base, page 30. Page 30, yeah. I know if you were coming because I tried calling a couple of times. They didn't know where you were. Okay. So on page 30, Tesfon base, we'll start from where where I'm more or less up to where it says Ain, which is right below. We've come to the bottom, counting lines up: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Last word in the line is Ain. You see that? There's a dot in front of it. No. 4 lines below that. Below you. Okay. Not the star dot. Okay. Yeah. Normally, if a king is a descendant of the house of David, you don't have to anoint him unless there was some dispute. Because Adonio disputed with him. Because of that dispute. Those are all cases of disputes, right? Lo King Siv, is it not because it says Kuma Shcheu Kizehu, this is really going back or previously in the war. Only it does not say Kuma Shcheu Kizehu Zeh, it say by David, does not say by David, only anoint him. From this we derive Zeto Mashiach, Ve'emach Yisrael To Mashiach. In fact, this is going on something else, a story about, not about the concept of a machlokas, but only kings of the house of David require Mashiach, and only if there's a dispute, but not Malchei Yisrael. I guess actually that, I guess I read it wrong. It should be 2 lines before it should say V'yom Ne Yoram. Was Yehu anointed because of Yoram? No. It was obviously some unique situation. Because Yehu and Yoram were both kings of the northern kingdom. And normally they wouldn't get anointed, and there I guess is like some special singularity that despite that they were anointed. Now, the next one it says, V'lo Yoshio Gnazo. This really is going on the line after. The line after should be over here, and this should be in the line after the next line. It should be transposed. But now I'll just say it outside. Just letting you know that I'm saying the answer before the question before the statement. And then we're going to have a question answer, and then the statement on which the question and answer are going. It says, V'lo Yoshio Gnazo, did not Yoshio put the oil of, it's like Jeopardy, did not the oil, Yoshio put the oil into safekeeping, he hid it away. Hadar Maraza must tell us that if they were anointed with a certain type of extinct oil, which is called apil b'simon, so some sort of balsam. So Yochaz ibn Yoakim achiv she'agadim imenu shtei shonim. So Yoachaz, he was anointed because of Yoakim, his brother, who was 2 years older than him, and nevertheless Yoachaz went first to be king. Yoakim was king later on. So the question is, that was at the end of the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. So on that the kasha was, the oil was already in Gniza. That was the question we just asked before this answer. There wasn't oil already in Gniza for the time of Yoshio, was before these people. And the answer is, you're right, they weren't anointed with the real oil, they're anointed with that other balsam type of oil. And the truth is, somehow, though I'm not sure how, this is probably going back on the issue of how do you have kings of the northern kingdom anointed, they're not from Malchei Beis David, and that also answered that they were anointed with this balsamic oil of whatever kind it was. Okay? Says, you only anoint kings from a horn, not from a motor oil can. Okay? Shol v'yehu nimshechu b'napach shol v'yehu, they were anointed from a can. Malchus Averis, their kingship was a temporary kingship, it went away. David Shlomo were anointed from a horn. Their kingship was a lasting kingship. You don't anoint kings to be, you don't anoint to be kings, priests. Meaning priests cannot serve as kings, right? Rabbi Yudan Dutaria said, how do we know that? Hashem lo yasu, Hashem lo yadu, it says, the scepter should not deviate from the tribe of Yehuda. Amar Rechia bar Baruchia both said another pshat. L'mayin Erichim, it says by the king. It says by kings in general, they should spend a long time on machto, on their kingship. Hu v'nav, he and his children, Mekerev Kol Yisrael, in the midst of all of Israel. Maxi Basrei was to say subsequently there too. Lo yeh Kohanim Alavim, it says the Kohanim Alavim should not have a portion, right? Oh, so from this is derived, they shouldn't have a portion in this kingship, which is discussed previously. Now, getting back to the previous Gemara, this is really a Gemara which appears elsewhere in the Yerushalmi in greater length and greater accuracy. The whole Gemara for the rest of the evening is basically Chazar. We had it elsewhere in Yerushalmi, but here it's not. In most cases, the Girs is not as good as elsewhere in Yerushalmi. So it says the Gemara. V'lo can't see Avaksiv doesn't say HaBechor Yochanan. It says the Bechor was Yochanan, right? The first of the last three kings of Israel, last four kings, the eldest was Yochanan, but that's not true. Later, before we said Yochanan is Yoachaz. And we said that Yoakim was 2 years older than he was. It wasn't, so Yochanan was younger. So it says, when it says Bechor Yochanan means Bechor Malchus, he was the first of several brothers to serve as king. V'aksiv doesn't say Ashlishi Tzidkio Arvi Sholom. Then it doesn't say that the third one was Tzidkio and the fourth one was Sholom. And that's a contradiction in that somewhere else it says that Sholom and Tzidkio are the same person. Rabbi Yechanan says that Sholom and Tzidkio are the same person. So it says the Gemara, top of Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, they are the same person. This person is not to be taken literally in terms of birth, or the Brad story about Shlishi, and here we're going to change the words around because Bnei Moshe says to change around. Shlishi L'Tolodos, he was the third born of the brothers. Or Vilna Malchus, he was the last one to serve as king. Okay, so he was the third one born and the last one to serve as king. Tzidkio was the final king of the sovereign state of Israel. Okay, first southern kingdom, sovereign state of Yehuda, I should say, Judea. Tzidkio, why is it called Tzidkio? Neither is his actual name, Tzidkio or Sholom. His actual name was Metania. But Tzidkio, why, as we'll see in a moment, Tzidkio is called Tzidkio. Tzidkio loves him because he accepted the justness of the judgment of the destruction which is meted out against him or on his watch. Sholom is called Sholom, should be Yom of Sholom Malchus. In his day, the kingship of the house of Judah ceased, of the house of David ceased. Okay, Lo Sholom Abashmei, Lo Tzidkio Shmei, but in point of fact, his name was neither Sholom nor Tzidkio, Elo Matanya, his name was Matanya. Although the Sivitza, which it says elsewhere, Vayimloch Melch Bavel as Matanya, Dodo Tachtav, the Nebuchadnezzar took Matanya and appointed him a client king. Okay? Hamashua, and that's Tzidkio and Sholom. Hamashua b'Shem HaMishcha, B'Binyan Rishon, switching to Kohanim. The Kohen was anointed with the priestly, or the oil of anointment. In the first Beis Hamikdash, is Lemurah B'Kohanim, is tantamount to the one who simply was vested with extra garments, 8/4, in the second Beis Hamikdash, Binyan Achron, the last building. V'asoi kaida marabi Yuna b'Shem Ravach, this alludes to that. This goes like that with Ravina. It's the name of, I can't see this on it. Name of Ravacha, Chamisha Dvarim Beis Hamikdash Achron. In 5 things, the second Beis Hamikdash was fell short, Minan Rishon, which over the first one. My time of what pasuk teaches us this: Alu Ahar, go out to the mountains, Va'beitzim, bring down wood, V'goyim, etc., Ikabda. it says, I shall derive honor. And that ikabdos, chaser hay, it's missing a hay. Elu hay dvarim, what is missing hay? The hay in Gematria is 5. These are 5 things. Beis HaMikdash, Achron, chaser, merishon. The 5 things that the second Beis HaMikdash is lacking over in contradistinction to the first one. Ve'eluena, these are the things that was lacking. Eish, the fire which descended from heaven and consumed korbanos. Aron, the ark which held the 2 tablets. Vurim Tumim, the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol's capacity to become illuminated, for whatever force it was. It should be, and here the 2 words missing, it should be V'shemen HaMishcha, the oil of anointment that was put into Knisa by Yeshua, and also it should be V'ruach HaKodesh, the divine spirit, because there's no nevuah in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Okay? You with me? I know, I probably put in the 2 words, okay? It's not me actually. The group from Moshe and the schos on the bottom both put in. Tani, we learned Kohen Mashiach may be par. The Kohen Mashiach, he brings that unique korban if he posket erroneously and then did the thing erroneously, so he brings a bull. Okay, Aim Rubagodim may be par. The Kohen just has additional garments to the second Beis HaMikdash Kohen Gadol. He does not bring a bull. Sure, bull is kosher. Ulo Kramer. It's not like Kramer. Kramer holds that even the Kohen on the second Beis HaMikdash, who are not anointed but just appointed with extra garments, they also bring the special bull. My God, Kramer, what's supposed to teach Kramer his perspective. So it says, I'll tell you, it says by the special korban brought by the Kohen Gadol Mashiach, he's an anointed one. Matam Lomer Kohen, why does it say Kohen? And we already know he's the anointed Kohen, right? Just say HaMashiach, right? Why does it have to say HaKohen HaMashiach? So I'll tell you, it says Rabbi Yochanan, Matam Lomer Kohen should be L'Rabos, to include, the extra word Kohen comes to include Merubah Begodim, the one who just was vested with extra garments. My time of the Rabbanon, what's the larger Rabbanon who say it's only the one who got the oil of anointment? Because Mashiach, they say Mashiach Yochel Zah Melech. Mashiach might mean king. I don't know Mashiach means the high priest. Maybe it means the king, right? Yochel Zah Melech. Matam Lomer Kohen. So why? Maybe it's talking about king, then it's talking about special Kohen of the king. Matam Lomer Kohen. What's say Kohen should be Lahotzi, to exclude Merubah Begodim and limit it to the Kohen Gadol, who's anointed with the Shevan HaMishcha. Says the Gemara, Achat Marlotzi L'Merubah Begodim. This actually is not going on specifically on Gemara, or rather it's going directly. And it's going on the issue that by bringing the extra the pancakes every day which Kohen Gadol was supposed to bring, were even brought by the Merubah Begodim, by the Kohen who just had the extra garments that are on the second Beis HaMikdash. So I understand why the distinction. Here you say that the special korban is only brought by the anointed Kohen as opposed to these guys who vested extra garments. Yet elsewhere you say L'Rabos Merubah Begodim, you include the guy who got extra garments, that he brings the pancakes. What's the difference? Why in one case do you preclude, one case do you include? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda said, each medrash is darshan its own way. Meaning each location has its own drasha. Now here the Gersa is all messed up for the next. The Pnei Moshe points out in the Psalm, you asked me about this before. Here this Gersa in these few lines is all messed up. And therefore the Pnei Moshe brings down the proper Gersa. Pnei Moshe says, you can either look at Pnei Moshe and 5 lines, for 6 lines to the bottom of the first column, or you can just follow along the Gemara and you'll see that I'm fixing the words which are no good. Okay? So it says, Ilu Nemar Mashiach V'lo Nemar Kohen. I'll tell you, it says to Gemara, as Pnei Moshe fixed it, where it just have said Mashiach and not said Kohen by the special korban. The Pnei Moshe, which is instead of Rashi. I would have said HaMelech, I would have said it's a king. It's not Toiva, because there's no other reference to Kohen in that parsha. I ain't told him, maybe he'll say, no, can't be talking about king, because we already discussed the special korban brought by a king. No, I would still say I'll hell him dover maybe par. I would say the king has two several levels. If the thing was concealed from him, in other words, he passed rosi, then he brings a bull. Balshigas Meissen, he just does a raw and raw, plain out straight without the previous psak, maybe soy. Then he brings the special goats. And we told Shomar Cohen, that's what I have to say. Cohen tells us that this Mashiach is not talking about a king, but talking about the anointed high priest. O Ilu Ne'emar, and vice versa. We just said Cohen by the Parhelim Dover. If we just said Cohen V'lo Ne'emar Mashiach, would not have said Mashiach. So Yisrael would have said Lo'ilam Aleim Dover may be par. I might have said on Helen Dover, when the thing is concealed from him, it brings a par. Mashiach's Ma'isa may be Sawyer. There, but on an unintentional avera without a previous psak, maybe he brings a plain, simple goat. Maybe Torah Shomer Moshev, Torah Shomer Kohen. That's what it has to say both. So you have to know that it's talking about a Kohen and it's talking about Kohen Moshiach. It's not just a regular Kohen. It's not just the king, but also it's not about a king like the previous psukim. We're talking about a anointed priest. And also have to make sure we know we're talking about an anointed priest and not just any priest, right? So that's what it has to say, both. It has to say Kohen and Mashiach. A priest as opposed to a king, a Mashiach, an anointed priest as opposed to a common priest. Okay? Says more further, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lines from where we stopped. And now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines to the bottom. Yochanan said, of our, you have one Kohen Gadol, one Kohen Gadol emeritus. And the Kohen Gadol emeritus brought the pancakes. So, if he transgressed and brought, or I don't know if avar really means here transgress, it means he came quickly. And brought his asiris ha'efa, shelo kosher. What? No, it is kosher. His. Okay. So even though he's the Kohen Gadol emeritus, he shouldn't be getting involved, but nevertheless it's kosher, right? Maskina lo Kohen Achana. It says, when Kohen Gadol is about to do Avodah Yom Kippur, we make him a backup Kohen Gadol. Do you remember that? The backup Kohen Gadol, lest he dies or becomes unfit in some other way. So it says more, Maskin lo Kohen Achana, we give it backup Kohen Gadol. Shema Yerabo Psul, maybe this guy will become unfit. What's the story? Can we put them together in the same house, prepare them for the 7 days before Yom Kippur? Says Mara, Amr Chagai, Rechaz said, Moshe was an oath by Moses, holy Moses, right? If they put them together in the same place, to Kotile, they would kill each other. Because they'll be, in competition with each other. So therefore, not necessarily literally, but So, what? Okay, so that wasn't quantum Gedolin. It was just many quantities. But it's good memory. Okay. So, also, it says one, him, Eromoshkim, normally in the normal circumstances, you only anoint one and not the other. You don't anoint two Kohen. Yocham says, not because of possible, but because they'd constantly be at each other's throats. They'd be in the state of war between the two of them. Others have a shimesh there. If the Kohen Gadol had to be pushed off temporarily because of some illness or tumah, and so another backup Kohen Gadol came in and served, Harishon, the first one, Kol Kedushas Kuna Olav. The first one he has all Kedushas Kuna, and he remains the de jure Kohen Gadol and formal Kohen Gadol. Right? Hasheni, the second, the fill-in guy, ain't a kosher Kohen Gadol, low Kohen Hediot. It does make a difference. He's stuck. He can't be a Kohen Gadol nor a Kohen Hediot. He's in limbo because, he can't go back down, he can't go back up. right? You can't go back down because Malin Kosh Lomarine can't go because it's the Kohen Gadol ahead of it. Amrei Yochanan says, but if this guy, the backup, transgressed and he served even though he's not supposed to, Avodaso, it should be as it says in Sech Yuman Apsula Bakshera. Avodaso show me who pays on Yom Kippur. In other words, the regular Kohen Gadol was sidelined and they brought in the backup. Who pays for the korbanos under those circumstances? It's learning out from the following case. Ma'aseh ben Alom Mitziporim. Return the page. The Ma'aseh with Ben Alom Mitziporim. She'ira Keri Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim. One of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim had an emission, so he was unfit. Right? V'nichas ben Alom b'shemei shtachta. And Balaam came in and served in front instead of it. So after he successfully did the avodah of the day, he came out to the king and said, Par v'soyer kohen gadol. It says the ayah, but it should be par v'soyer akrev mayom. Sorry, the bull and the goat which was sacrificed to Yerushalmi and Craven. Who's responsible there? But he was hoping actually that he would pay for them, because if he paid for them, that would indicate that he had become the kohen gadol. So the king knew what he was asking. They said, Lo dayacho, he said, Baralam, it's not good enough for you, it's not good enough for you that you served 1 hour before, or 1 day here, before he who made statements and created the world, that should suffice for your honor. So at that point, Ben Elam knew that he lost his chance and he wasn't going to get it, even though he served as the backup. Ma'aseh b'Shimon Kimchis is a Ma'aseh Shimon Kimchis who was the Kohen Gadol. We had this again back in Yuma. She also went out to stroll with the king. Erev Yom Kippurim, Erev Yom Kippur Chashecha. Erev Yom Kippur as night was falling. The Notza Tzinoris Shorok Mipivav Gadol. It seems the king was a non-Jewish king, and some saliva came out from his mouth on the garment of the Kohen Gadol. But Timaso made Shimon Tamei, so couldn't serve in the base of Mikdash that year, Yom Kippur. Nichlas Yudah Chavashimish Tartov, Yudah's brother came in and served as Kohen Gadol instead of him. Also, Yom Nat Kohen Gadol, their mother saw Shnei Banim Kohanim Gedolim, 2 of her sons serving as Kohanim Gedolim. Shiva Banim Hayulo, the Kimchis. Their mother had 7 children. Gedul and all of them since Kohen Gedolim at some point or another. That seems not by illness or death or attrition, but rather because of various different tumors or other inhibitions or problems. Okay, so then when one was inhibited from doing what he's supposed to do, so he sent somebody else in his stead. Okay? So says Umar, they said to her, said the Mexican said to Kimchis, Mama seem to me, what good deeds do you have in your hands that you were zoch to have 7 children Kohanim Gedolim? So he said to them, Yavolai may become 20 to 10. Yavolai may become me. In other words, she was taking an oath. Imro koros basi soros roshi. If the beams of my head, my house ever saw the hairs of my head, she was so frum, she always covered her hair even in private. Vimras chaluki, and where they ever saw the hem my garment, in which she didn't ever lift up her skirts, even in private. My entire life. Armin, they said, Kol kimchai kimchin. They said all flowers are flower, but kimcha the kimchis, the flower of this woman kimchis, who is so makbid and tznius, Solus is the finest flower. Korla Apostle they secretary this pasuk. Kokfudas bas melech pnima. All the honor of the king is internal. All the honor of the king's daughter is internal. Mishmotzos lo she's wearing gold box dresses of some sort. So here too, her tznius was outstanding. Says more yochol. Here it says lo, but the Moshe takes out. Yochel Yeh Moshe Melchama, does the Moshe Melchama, the one who's anointed to go out to king, to go out to war, to represent the Beis Hamikdash in the battlefield as the source of inspiration of Jewish people, and to die for them, and he's anointed. Yochel Yeh Moshe Melchama, should be Mevi'ah says to Yisrael, can he bring the pancakes every day? It says no he was in a hereditary position that his children can serve instead of him. He who has children standing instead who can work instead of him, maybe he brings the 10th measure, the pancakes. Is not a hereditary position, so therefore any maybe doesn't bring the 10th measure, the pancakes. Okay? How do we know the guy who's the point of a reward? His son does not take his place. Because it says Shivas Yomim Yil Basham Kohen v'Gomer. It says that for 7 days the Kohen and his children, which is talking about the Kohen Gadol, so Eshu Bolo Omoy, and they wear the garments of Omoy. Eshu Bolo Omoy l'Shas B'Kodesh, those who come to the tent, to the Mishkan, to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, but no, they'll make of their children come instead of them subsequently and inherit their position. Those who do not serve in the Beis HaMikdash serve in some extrinsic capacity. Of their children not take their place after they die. The guy who's anointed to wage war can be elevated to Kuna Gdolos. So it says more very simple. Pinchas ben Elazar, it says about Pinchas the son of Elazar, that he was Nogid Hoyo Aleim. He was the leader upon them, meaning obviously leader of the Kohanim, the Kohen Gadol, and Hashem was with him. Was with him. Now we go off on a tangent. Rabbi Yossi Karava Bam Kantor Rabbi Elazar, when he wanted to make a mockery of Elazar, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yossi, meaning of his son, he said, he said, Livnim Imo. Once upon a time God was with you, but now God is not with you anymore, which of course Pentecost was punished. They lost God's presence for whatever reason. So now even I'm sorry, why actually here gives the reason. Because in the days of Zimri he protested the licentiousness, but he made Pilesh on the days of Pilesh Begiva, when they had restored the concubine, then he didn't protest the licentiousness properly. Okay? Lo Micha. How do we know that Mashiach Melchama does go and serve the Beis HaMikdash, that he serves with 8 garments like a Kohen Gadol? Rabbi Ba Baruchia B'Shem Yehuda said, "Ubidi HaKodesh Shel Aaron, the holy garments which belong to Aaron, Yulubanav Acharav." The Shriver's children after him. Atam Omar Acharav. What does it mean after him? It should say his children. What does it mean children after him? So it's the Gdula Shacharav. It's for the people who are great beneath him, even though they're not related to him, and who's immediately below the Nasi. Aaron, who's immediately below Aaron, who's the next greatest position, Beis HaMikdash, the Mashiach Milchama. So obviously he serves in the, and just like the Bonavs will serve in Big Day HaKodesh, so too those Mashiach Milchamas will serve in Eid Begadim as well. It says more, Minayin Shu Nishal. Now here's really something missing, and Moshe makes it up. In the bottom line, the first column, and the top line, the second column. It says, Choser Kam B'tzarech Lomar, it's missing, it's this way it should say, Kamoshi Yuma, I'm the top of the second column, Pnei Moshe. Moshe Yuma, like it says, Yuma of Megillah, I would have said like you, that's 8 garments, but not true. Lomar Oved El Nishal. But we're not talking about serving the Beis HaMikdash, but rather how many garments he wears in order to ask the Urim V'Tumim, because you know the Kohen Mashiach Chomad asked the Urim V'Tumim question. How does he ask? So I serve Yeshua Nisa, the Barka Pora, Min D'Loima. So Rabbi Yeshua brought a Brisa on Barka Pora from the south. The Tani learned, Eino Oivik, getting back to the Gemara. It says more, the Talmud Omar, Eino Oivik. Where is this actually? Where does it go? Oh, we didn't get to it anymore. Okay, so anyway, I'm not even sure what it is anymore. Hey, let me go back to where we were and see how we can compare this in. So, we how do we know they actually get, he asks of the owner to him in eight garments. The garments, though, you're going to say, Aron Ilubanov. I'd say, Achro, the Kedusha Shal Achro, for the Kedusha after Mesemet. So the bottom line is we're not talking about Ovid, but rather being asked, not about the Avoda inside, rather about asking you to the outside. You need to have 8 garments, even the Mashul Milchama. Rabbi Yirmiyah, Bekama, who should be, okay, if that's true, Bekama, who Ovid, it should be, not Neshal. Mu'etzon to establish outside, he uses the Big Day HaKodesh to do it in his formal office. 8 garments. So how does he serve those kind of Beis Hamikdash? So I see Rav Yisrael Sisa Bar Kapar Midraima. The Tana we learned they brought the price for Bar Kapar of the south, and they taught us Eino Ovid Lo B'Dal Eino Ovid Lo B'Dal Kohen. He cannot use the 4 garments of a Kohen head of a common Kohen. V'Lo Shmona Kohen Gadol nor the 8 garments Kohen Gadol. Basically, a Kohen Meshul Mechama is stuck. He can't do it in the Beis Hamikdash. You know why? Because he really should worship as a commoner, which is in 4 garments. Problem is that public policy issue, because when they see him then outside the Beis Hamikdash in 8 garments, they're going to have a dissonance. They'll think, how come inside with 4 and outside with 8? So it says, Amra said, Bedina Shebebar, but it's really about what I just told you. Really, he should serve with 4. It should be. Why they say only served, why they say doesn't serve with 4, only with 8. Shlo people shouldn't say Rina Kohen Head, they shouldn't say we see a Kohen Gadol, this Kohen, who's a commoner inside the Beis Hamikdash, sometimes he's serving, which really means when he's asking, the Tumim with 8 garments, if it's a Kohen Gadol, we don't want that dissonance. Alright, Vienna said, how are people going to experience such dissonance? Isn't there a difference? The Lo B'Ifnim Oibi does the Avodah inside. But he asks for him to him outside, so people are not going to see both. Says the Gemara, the Chutz, you make a mistake, which goes on the inside, something goes down the outside. Says the Gemara, yes, you do. You do. For example, didn't Rabbi Tar from the Rabbi of all of Israel make a mistake between the blowing of the shofar for the purpose of blowing of the trumpets for the purpose of gathering the people, the population, the midbar, and Kiyas Korban and the purpose of sacrificing a korban. So you see, it seems to get mixed up. It says, the children of Aaron, the priests should blow the trumpets to mimim, so it sounds like they're whole, in other words, without blemish, little by moment, not once or blemish. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi said, how can you say, Rabbi Akiva, cut down my children, he said, the language of an oath. Im lo reisi, if I had not seen Shimon Achi Ima, Chiger Shimon, my uncle, who's lame, Baras Braglav in one of his legs, Vayva Bazara, and he was standing in the courtyard of Chatzoitzos Biyodo, and he had the trumpets in his hand, and he was blowing. So you see, even a Ba'amun can blow. Amar Rabbi Kiva said, no. Shemalori Yisrael Ela B'Shas HaKol, maybe you'll see him blowing to gather the congregation, but not for the purpose of the Korbanos. V'ani Omer B'Shas Korban, all I said that you can't be a Ba'amun is at the time the Korban is being sacrificed. Amar Rabbi David said, took it back, he said, he took it out the other way now. You do not make a mistake, not deviate right or left. You are correct. Aniu, it should be I saw Aniu Shar Isiasam I saw the deed. Kikalon changed Girsa. The loyal part didn't understand it. I told the Reishu Maskim Shmuel, you expounded upon it and made it conform with the other halachos which we have learned. Okay? A Karl Push Anybody who separates from you, Rabbi Akiva, Kiprash Mechayev, it's as if he's separating from his life. Okay, so far we've done a blot in 3/4. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines to the bottom of Tes Zayin and base. Okay? So it says the Kohen who should tell for who is anointed. What does it mean anointed? Matam Lomer. What does it mean to say? Fishanem, and this is talking about specifically the avoid of Yom Kippur. Lefish called Parsha Nemar Ba'aron. So the whole parsha is talking about Aaron Cohen. Maybe only a Cohen goes anointed with the oil of Noime can do the avoid on Yom Kippur. It's true, even a guy who has the extra clothes, like that second basically means the she goes to the avoid on Yom Kippur. That's why the pasuk says, not just Hashem Shach, Hashem Aleinu, he was vested by his hand as opposed to having any oil. And how do we know that even if he hasn't been formally vested for Yom Kippur, but Yom Kippur, the first Kohen Gadol becomes possible, and you need to use the backup, how do we even know that that second guy can go to the plate? Says the Kohen should atone whatever Kohen we can find. But how does the second guy get appointed? After all, the first guy got the garments before Yontif. How does the second guy get appointed? By a verbal declaration, you are Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Zera said, a verbal declaration suffices for this. This teaches us, Shememanim Kain Repay, you can appoint also elders, meaning Rabbanim. Baal Peh Smicha doesn't have to be done with a physical action. It doesn't really have to do with much mental action either. It just has to be verbalized to call somebody a rabbi. Okay? Says Rabbi Chira said, the Brisa says that you can anoint verbally because they told the Kavya Mahala when he was being obstreperous in their eyes, he wasn't yet a Musmach. They said, Chazor b'chol ba'arba dvarim, we're not going to force certain things you say which are not relevant to us. And we will make you, sounds like we will verbally make you a leader in Israel. Says the Moed, is going back to our Mishnah, who, it's a Kohen Gadol has got to take a virgin, right? The king doesn't have law, not any other kind of leader. And Vihu, the extra vav, teaches us that also the anointed one for war has got to take a basula as his wife. Isha b'basula yikach, a woman in her virginity, she should take prala bogesh kol basula, that excludes bogros, girls over 12 and a half, who no longer have basulim. U'strei paskim, the lezer b'shem machshir, they say she can marry a bogeres. Yitzchak Sharbi Yitzchakas, Abishal Dvorim Kain. What's the story by this is actually not our sugi, it's a new sugi which goes to Sech the Trumas. What if a guy found out that he was a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza in the middle doing avoda? In other words, he's a Kohen who was possible because his mother was a divorcee. Now, in fact, if he found out after he had finished the avoda he did was kosher. What if he found out midstream? Okay? So it says on Yitzchak Shabbat called Varike, what about all other things? Klemetz, Chakach Maktir. If he did the kmitza from the mincha, he took the fistful, and then he found his ben gusha ben chalutza, and afterwards he put on the mizbeach or mekabel. I'm sorry, no, he just did the komitz, right? So even if he did the komitz right, komitz and then found his ben gusha ben chalutza, that's okay. But acher maktir, you just can pick up from where he left off, and another guy does the putting on the mizbeach. In other words, you don't retroactively nullify that entire segment of activity, but another guy comes and takes over where you get up to. Okay? So we say Makabach, really for the Kohen who found out that he was Ben Gusha Kalutza had been Makabal Dam. Could somebody else sprinkle the blood? Sorry, if you rape, burn the part of doing Chayas, then could somebody else sprinkle it? Rabbi Yerushalmi said, oh yes, he can. Also, so they made basically a guy became Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, or found out this Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza in the middle of the avoda. They made him kechatos gzula shelo nodu rabim, like a song chatos not known to the masses. which Rabbanan said because of Hefker Basin actually is Mechaper in order not to for public policy reasons, I said that. Okay, says the Gemara, Adam must teach us kometz. So in fact, we resolve if one kohen did the kometz and then he found out that he's a ben grusha ben chalutza, achar maknik somebody else complete the process. Mekabel can set the blood of chayrus or somebody else can sprinkle it. So if he can burn the paradum of chayrus and let somebody else sprinkle the ashes. Rabbi Yitzchak Shal, they asked similar case. I was standing and sacrificed on the mizbeach. When came out for his mother was a divorcee or woman under the what do you do with him? Now, this is an amazing thing. We say it's Kamisha Meis. It's if he died mid avodah, and therefore, do we say that? And therefore, Yachzor Tzechem Komo. And therefore, when he became Ben Gusha Ben Chalutza, his term is automatically up as if he's dead, and therefore, any unintentional murders who lack the year mitlets can go free as they can when the Kohen Gadol dies. Or do we say, is he worse? It's as if there's no Kohen Gadol in his day because Kohen Gadol didn't die; he was just rendered unfit, and that's not the same thing. And therefore, that Kohen Gadol, since he turned out not to be a valid Kohen Gadol, there's no mechanism for this Rotzech B'Shogi ever being released, maybe stuck in the air and Miklat forever. And one doesn't give any conclusion about this. Okay, Halacha Gimel. Now this looks something which had identically, except that the Gersa was a little bit better there in Sanhedrin, the second pair. Kohen Gadol Purim Milamato. Now Kohen Gadol, when he rips the clothes because somebody died, his family dies from below. He rips from below. Hediot does it from above. In other words, like in a prominent place in the garment. Okay. Kohen Gadol sacrifices when he's onain between the death and the levaya. But at that point, he can't eat from the korbanos. Hediot commoners, lo makriv cannot sacrifice until their base is buried. Lo cannot eat as well. So as Rabbi Eliezer b'shem Rav Kahana said, L'malon, when it says that a commoner does it l'malon, it doesn't mean literally spatially in the garment, on the upper reach of the garment, but it says l'malon means l'malon above the hem. He rips into the hemline, right? Whereas l'maton, if you rip below, that means l'maton iknei sofa, below the hemline, which is easier to fix. Rabbi Yochanan Amar l'maton mamesh. Rabbi Yochanan says no, l'maton means not just beneath the hemline, but rather rips at the bottom of his garment. Rabbi Yochanan, in other words, Kohen Gadol wore long garments. He wouldn't rip anywhere on the top. He'd only rip on the bottom. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan soik l'mivkei Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yochanan went to visit Rabbi Chanina. Karava go East Tatro while he was still in Mill Street. Shama Adama heard that Rabbi Chanina died. Obviously, he was deathly ill at that point, right? Shach Aisim Yiko Mani Tavia Tatuvia the Shupsa. He went and sent his best shot, his clothes of Vazen, and he ripped them in the Mill Street. The Yochanan Pali Rabbi Tarte. Rabbi Yochanan argued to Rabbi Yehuda. We actually didn't have two things. One thing is that Rabbi Yehuda holds you only do kriya on your Rabba Muvak, on your real Rebbe, not on somebody who's just a man of stature. Also, he holds that you have to do that the kriya can be elsewhere in the garments. It doesn't actually have to be a literal rending, which it seems to be that which Rabbi Yochanan said. Says the Gemara, Basar Rabbi Kahana, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer named Rav Kahana, who says that how's it going to work? Just a second. You know what that means. 1 second. What's the problem? Want to go home? Another 10 minutes. You don't want to go home? All right, another 10 minutes anyway. So I'm just find what this is. You wanted to demonstrate Kovra Torah. Absolutely. Clean that. Oh, I guess Rabbi Yochanan ripped the back here. He ripped the back or the bottom. There was Rabbi Lezer said you can do above the hem and below the hem, but it's got to be on the top. But Rabbi Yochanan said you can do it literally on the bottom, and I guess he did it literally on the bottom here. Something to that effect. So it says Gemara, Ink Rabbi Lo Yifron Kolikor. So if it's like Rabbi Yehuda, you shouldn't rip all together because you don't only rip on Rav Muvok. Lasa da LL Avival Imo K'divrei Meir. Says the Gemara, this is only going on his father and mother, like Rabbi Meir. In other words, Rabbi Meir, that's your Buddha say you have to rip Dafka the hem is only going to his father and mother, like Rabbi Meir. The time we learned, they'll call him Mesim. Enomavdil Kumis Safa. On all the Mesim, you do not rip the hem, Avi Imo, except in your father and mother, K'divrei Meir. Rabbi Meir says, Kol Keresh Enomavdil Kumis Safa. No. If you don't rip the hem, no matter who you're tearing for, I raise the Kereshel Tiflus. This is a frivolous tear. It doesn't do any good. So Lamaisa, Rabbi Yehuda would not agree with what he said before. It was named Rav Kahana that there's two types of tearing: one below, including the hem, one not including the hem. He holds any tear which doesn't include the hem is not valid tearing altogether. It's a meaningless gesture. It's why about Tashkas, because he's ruining the garment for naught. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda tore not on the hem; he tore somewhere else. And the truth is that, like Rabbi, that's not just not going like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda shouldn't ever rip unless you're going to rip the hem. But it's even not going like Rabbi Meir, because the Meir holds that you do Kriya only in your father and your mother, and you do Kriya on everybody, and your father and mother you rip the hem, and everybody else you do Kriya, but you still have to do it by this age, by the area of the hem, not on the bottom like Rabbi Yochanan did. Anyway, says on Ma'ikadun, what's the bottom line? So it says Marchayim b'Kohen Gadol. It says Omer, but it should be Chomer. It's Israeli b'Kohen Gadol, and it should be She'eno, not Shehei. It's both based in Sanhedrin over there. She'eno Ma'adil Kana. The truth is, you're right. You can even say, Rabbi, you always have to rip the hem. It's a Chomer b'Kohen Gadol, you don't rip the hem, right? I mean, even though you're not ripping the hem, right, it's still also. So it's by every other mace, by anybody else, you can rip some other part of the garment other than the hem, right? A Kohen Gadol really was not biyotze kriyan, say his father and mother, if he ripped the upper part. So let him rip the upper part and not the hem. So therefore he's not doing kriya. And he's still not tearing. He's not doing kriya. He's still tearing because he's tearing not on the hem. Saying I ain't mixed up myself. There are three types of kriyas, right? One is to ripping the hem, right? Where they cut it to the shirt, right? The other, which that's over father and mother. On a brother or sister will say like that, you don't have to rip the hem, right? And then there's the kriya which Kohen Gadol does, which is on the very bottom of his garment, right? Right. So there's a whole machlokas, when it says lamata in our Mishnah, does the fact mean literally the bottom, as I just said? Does it mean beneath the hem, meaning that you rip like in here, right? Which somehow is easier to mend. Okay? So that easier to mend. Yeah, because you rip through the hem. Oh. You don't rip, you don't do it, lengthwise do it. Okay? So it did crosswise. So Lamaisa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, I think I made a mistake. That's what got me mixed up. When it says Ink Rabbi Yehuda lo yifron kol ikor, right? You see that Ink Rabbi Yehuda lo yifron kol ikor? So I think that's not going to Rabbi Yochanan on the Kash. It's going on the Mishnah. Let me just check that out. As I said, this is a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Yeah, that was my mistake. It's not a question of Rabbi Yochanan. It's going like on the Mishnah. If our Mishnah holds like Rabbi Yehuda, don't do any kriya, because if you don't do the ham, you're not doing anything, right? So don't bother doing anything, and don't bother rib on the bottom. Don't do anything at all. So lo as yodor, don't do a bond, don't do beneath the ham. You're not doing it's a meaningless gesture. It's about tashkis. So lo as yodor vivi o kedivrei meir. So our Mishnah is going on father and mother like Rabbi Meir. Time learned al kom beisim eno mabdil kom kona sofa el aviv alimo. And all of them, and all beisim we don't do the hem. Only a father and mother can do Rabbi Meir. So therefore, there's such a thing according to Meir as kriya not on the hem. So that's why Mishnah allows the kohen gadol to do kriya, just not on the hem. Where it is exactly beneath them, beneath the bottom of the garment, but l'maisa that's kriya. It's also do that. It's a shtus. So he can't be. Well, the Mishnah says koker she'enu mabdil kona sofa. If you don't cut the hem, I raise the keresh tivul to the frivolous kriya. Why would you do it all together? So our Mishnah, which recognizes the lower degree of kriya, that's going like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Michael, what's the bottom line? Again, Chomra b'Kohen Gadol she'eno mavdil kana sofa. The truth is that you could say even according to Rabbi Yehuda that there is such a thing as kriya, even a lesser form of kriya, because it's a Chumra on the Kohen Gadol specifically. And so it's interesting on Hova for a Kohen Gadol that he doesn't rip the ham, he rips something else because of the Chumra of his kedusha. Okay. Now the truth is that kedusha is probably learned out from the pasuk because it says by the me'il. It's made in a specific way that it shouldn't rip. So we see ripping the clothing of Kohen Gadol is a problem. Okay. Says the Gemara Vayter. Kohen Gadol makriv onei, and Kohen Gadol sacrifices in onei v'locha, but he cannot eat when he's onei. Divrei Meir. Meir says kol oso yom. Meir says how. Rabbi Meir says as long as it's an onei. It says the entire day. Now the entire day means the entire day means not all the time. Let's say his father's only buried a few days later, right? So it's only the first day that he's considered that the issue of only applies anyway. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Omer Gomer Kavod Shiviyar Bolo. He just says no, it applies. Which is not an onain. It wouldn't be an onain. What? Yeah, Rishon. I'm not sure I said the right thing. Rabbi Yehuda wrote. 1 second. It's like this. Kohen Gadol can sacrifice his onain, but he cannot eat when he's an onain. Dear Meir, Kohen Meir. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda Meir Kol Yom. Rabbi Yehuda says the entire day he can. The entire day he can serve, even though he's an onain. Shimon says he's complete the avodah which has in his hand, but then he's got to assist. So it says in Rabbein Rabbi Shimon Chado. Between Rabbein and Rabbi Shimon there is one distinction. Rabbi Shimon, you can only finish the avodah which you have in your hand, then you got to leave the base and make Mikdash. Rabbi Meir, you can complete all the avodas you want to do that day, and then leave. Bain Rabbi Yehuda Ben Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon Chada. Between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, there's one difference. Not specifically, that's not literally one difference, but it means that according to Rabbi Yehuda, can sacrifice that entire day. According to Rabbi Shimon, only that avodah, right? You can only do that avodah which you're involved with. Okay? Ben Rabbi Yehuda, the difference between Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda is hachnosa. What's hachnosa mean? So it means in Ephraim in Sanhedrin says the difference is even if it was outside, he can go inside it. They didn't do the avodah. He has the right to go in. Rabbi Yehuda, whatever he's doing, he can do, but he can't go in. Okay, right? Where Rabbi Yehuda says close to you means as long as he's inside the Beis Hamikdash, he can continue to serve. But once he leaves that day, he can't go back in. So according to Rabbi Shimon, he just does the avodah which is in hand right now and leaves. As long as he stays in, he can stay in. But once he leaves, he can't come back. Where a mayor can go in and go out. He doesn't have that local bone in. It's suspended vis-a-vis him. Okay? Now, the case is a little bit messed up. So Gilna Fry picks it up in Sanhedrin. I read the way it fixes up, continuing on. Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Dimi, Masayim, he drew the following distinction between them. Rameir says, Hoya bifnim, he was inside, Hoya Yetze. He would have he could go out if he wants. Hoya b'chutz, he was outside. Nichnas, he can come in if he wants. He can do whatever he wants. Remember, Hoya b'fnim, it says he was inside. Lo Yetze, he wouldn't go out. Hoya b'chutz, but he was outside. Lo Nichnas, then he can't come back inside. Okay, and Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rita says whatever he has in his hands, he finishes, and then he goes. Rabbi Yosef, Rav Chuna said, Masnis Rabbi Shimon. Our Mishnah is like Rabbi Shimon. Not our Mishnah, actually, Mishnah in Sanhedrin. Because Mishnah says he does go to Levaya. It says, he says he doesn't leave the base. Hamikdash, not that he doesn't literally leave. But he doesn't leave together, they leave separately. He follows Levaya, but at a distance. When they go to come into a street, Huyotzi leaves that street. When they come in, he reveals himself, and goes behind them. No, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but in any event, he follows Levaya, which means that he doesn't stay in the base and make the whole time. It's like Rabbi Shimon. He's got to go out and follow the funeral procession, right? Just finishes what he did. At Pesach here, he goes and until the opening city, Divrei Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, what? Yeah, but I messed up. I'm just right, Shimon, but this is a new thing. This is a separate thing. Because look, this is right, Meir. It's like a new thing. It's like Rabbi Shimon. No, so I'm not sure now what I'm at this. This is 1 second. Yeah. See, there's a break in the middle. It should say Masdisa Rabbi Shimon. Period. That's the riot that's going on Rabbi Shimon. Okay? There should be a dot over there. Okay? Now, to the Ella, we should really take out. We should say, Hey nichnasim v'yotze. When they come in, he goes out. Hey nichnasim, they come in, v'unigle, he reveals himself v'yotze achrein and follows them. It's just describing how the process of how the Levaya works, but this is no longer the proof for the previous thing. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda Shitosam. Rameir says it has discretion go Levi, and then it'll come back and behave it again. You can go in and out. Right? Any Yitzhak HaMikdash, he can never leave the base HaMikdash. Right? Rabbi Yehuda holds, once he's out, he can't go back in, so therefore he shouldn't go out. Right? It says Mikdash Lo Yitzei. Right? It says in Mikdash Lo Yitzei. Lamad, it teaches us Elo Yod Lo Yitzei. He should not go out. But Yotzah, if he went out, Lo Yachoz, he wouldn't come back again. Crack in again. Rav Shem says, Ein Anina L'Meisuva. The concept of Oinin only exists vis-a-vis a mace. In other words, you're an Oinin vis-a-vis a mace, but not vis-a-vis any other tzara. The Chsiv says, V'anuvav Lup Socher. There will be mourning for its avelus in its openings. The fishermen will be upset. Those who cast the net into the river will be in avelus. So we see avelus by fishermen. Said, our Mishnah said it's ein anina tmeya. The anina which makes a person tummy prevents avoida is elements of is only for a mace. Ezo anina, what's anina? Mishas misa chas kvura. You know what? I'm running out of tape, so we might have to do this over again. I'm going to go though till the tape expires. Ezo anina, what's anina? Mishas misa chas kvura. For the time death until the time of burial. Divir Rebbe. Chomri and Chomri say kolos sayom. It's the entire first day, regardless. Ashkachas amar kula v'chumra Rebbe, kula v'chumra Rabbanan. So kula v'chumra vis-a-vis Rebbe, kula v'chumra vis-a-vis Rabbanan. Ma'amav k'nei, what's the difference? Mason nikvar b'shaito. If the mason was died and was buried immediately. You're an oinen that entire day. No, but a tefillin you can't do avoid if you're a kohen, can't eat if you're a kohen gadol. You're only an oinen for that time until the burial. And vice versa, if the mace died and was only buried 3 days later, oinen only the first day. That's it. Rebbe, however, you don't fall 3 days until the mace is buried. They both said, no, Rebbe reads only that day. Says whatever comes first, either that day or the Levaya, but doesn't go beyond that day. Like that, what you learned, Rebbe said, the aninus of the night afterwards, after the Levaya, is only the Rabbanan. After the Misa is only the Rabbanan. The aninus of Torah is only that day, regardless when the burial takes place. The proof of that is that they said, Oine toiva v'oichel pischoler, and Oine goes to the mikveh and eats his Pesach that night after nightfall. So it means that it sounds like even they didn't yet bury the mace. So it's more not necessarily varayomra aninus yom Torah. Didn't they say aninus is doraisa? Must be there's no aninus after nightfall, even the mace not yet buried. So there's no raya. Maybe there it's okay that he can make his Pesach at night, not because there's no aninus at night, even though Levaya hasn't yet taken place. Maybe Levaya took place already, just took place right before Shkia, and that's why he can toivel and eat his Pesach that night, because the aninus is over, both in terms of the time and in terms of the event of the burial. We'll stop here for this evening. It's in the Bavli though as well.